And welcome to the Quillen ETSU Physicians webinar for Allscripts Basic Navigation for the Front Desk and Medical Records. Once you've logged into Allscripts, you will automatically be taken to your workplace. The workplaces in Allscripts are defined by the user role, so your workplace should be set up for either the front desk or medical records, and the word front desk or medrec will appear up here in the upper left-hand corner. If the workplace does not have your correct job title listed here, please let us know, as we will need to fix that for you. Also, as soon as you'll log on, you'll see a grayed out toolbar icon somewhere on your screen. This is the floating clinical toolbar. You won't need to use this, so we suggest that you hide this from view when you first log on so that you won't see it again until you log on again. To do this, go ahead and click on the Tools link in the upper right-hand corner of the toolbar, click the down arrow, and then click on the Show Hide Clinical Toolbar. Now, we'd like to point out some of the features and terms in the workplace, as you'll hear these terms often throughout training. The tabs across the top of the page, Task List, Work List, Clinical Desktop, Daily, etc., comprise your horizontal toolbar, or the HTB. The links on the left-hand side of the page are your vertical toolbar, or the VTB. And we do use these terms often, HTB and VTB, so we wanted to point that out for you. Now we're going to go ahead and pull in a patient here so that we can demonstrate the patient banner. Now, there are several ways to pull up a patient, and the recommended and most likely method is to pull them in from the doctor's schedule. But we want to show you how to pull in a patient without them being scheduled in case you have to deal with a phone call or something like that. So you see the Select Patient link here underneath the HTB with the down arrow next to it. Click on the arrow, and you'll get two choices, Search and Clear. Clicking on Search will bring up another box in which you can type the patient's last name. And if you notice the small field next to the patient field, you'll see that you can also search by the patient's date of birth, medical record number, phone number, etc. And you can default this into date of birth or any of these options here if you typically search by date of birth. And we'll show you how to do that in another session. Now, because all of our fake patients have the last name of Allscripts, we're going to leave this at name, and we're going to type in part of the patient's last name in the patient field and then hit search. And we're going to choose the patient we want by clicking on it once and then clicking OK. The patient that we chose should have populated into this area here underneath the HTB, and this is called the patient banner. Now, the patient banner contains demographic information on the patient. As you can see here, Diana is 77 years old, female. She does have allergies. Her date of birth is listed, home phone number, medical record, etc. We also want to point out a couple of these little icons here on the banner. The FYI box here in yellow is just a section where notes can be added on the patient. We tend to think of this section as replacing the sticky note on the paper chart. Items added here will include things like the patient is hard of hearing or the patient requires an interpreter. This is just useful information that can be viewed by anyone in the office. If the FYI box on the patient banner is yellow, that means that there is an available FYI. If it's grayed out, then the section is empty. Now, we also want to point out two other icons on the patient banner. This small blue I, which stands for information icon, is where the patient's information, where their demographic information is actually stored. So if you click on the small blue I, you'll see the FYI box pops up here too, as well as this chart alerts box. And this is a section that's accessible by the clinical staff, and it's kind of the same as the FYI, only it's for clinical information. Now, the information under here, under the clinical information section, you'll see a field called Medication History Consent. And if you notice the little icon next to it, that's the same icon that sits next to the blue I on the patient banner. And basically what this stands for is Medication History Consent. Now, if you see in the drop-down box, you have three choices here: unknown, granted, and declined. If you have asked the patient for their medication history consent and they've granted consent, click on Granted, the icon disappears. Also, if you click on declined, if the patient has said, no, we're not going to give this to you, the icon also disappears. The icon will only appear on the patient banner if the consent history is unknown. And that's just a quick reminder to let you know that that's a piece of information that you need to ask the patient for. Now we're going to scroll down through the rest of this field. You can see here the demographic information is here, patient's employer, their emergency contact information. As you see here, most of this section, you can't really add anything here, and that's because most of this information will flow in over from Experior. You can, however, add a pharmacy here, associated providers, and in the top section, you can change a few of these fields, such as the patient's PCP, and if they have a language, if their primary language is something other than English, you can change that here too. Okay, so let's X out of this, and we're going to go over here to the daily schedule. And this is basically where you're going to pull in your physician schedules. To do so, click on this blue icon here that says All, and type in the physician's name in the field here. Now we're using our fake physicians, so we're just going to put in the first few letters of that. Click Go. And where it's already highlighted, we can just go ahead and hit OK, if that's the provider that we want to pull in. Now we want to show you a few things on the daily schedule. Most of it is fairly self-explanatory. It will always default to the current date. However, you can change the date of the schedule in several different ways. Underneath the provider field is a date field. If you click on this little calendar icon next to the date field, it will pull up a calendar, and you can choose, any other date of the year in here. Click the date you want, and then just click OK. If you just want to move around within the current week, you can click on these tabs here at the top of the schedule, and that'll navigate you around within the current week. If you want to go forward by a week, this black icon over here on the right, little arrow, click on it to go forward a week. And you can also go backward a week just by clicking on the previous week icon. And if you get too far off and you just want to go back to today's date, you can click on this little icon here that says Go to Today when you hover your mouse over it. So that's how you kind of navigate around in time on your schedule. A couple of other things we want to point out. You can pull in more than one physician here, and you can default certain physicians into the daily schedule. That's sort of a personalization option. We're going to go over that in another session. We just wanted to let you know that it is possible. Now, some of the fields we want to cover here. If you see this field that has an A on top of it, that's the arrived field. So if the patient has arrived in the office and has been checked in through Experior, the letters ARR in green will show up in this field. If the appointment is still pending, if they have not yet arrived, the letters PEN will show up here. Now, the patient location and the patient status is information that will be put in by the nurses once the patient has been taken back to the room. And this is just a handy way to keep track of where the patient is in the office. Depending on your workflow, this may be something that you'll be filling out when the patient checks out. It's just going to depend on how your office works, but again, we'll cover that in another session. Now let's go over here to the tasks field, and as you see here, some of these patients have a lot of tasks, and this is basically the to-do list on the patient who is currently pulled up into the patient banner. If you want to actually look and see what these tasks are, you're going to go to the Task List tab. And as you can see here, the view is set to default into My Active Tasks. And these are tasks that are assigned to you specifically, or if you're on any teams that tasks may come through on, those will pull in here as well. Now, if you want to view the tasks that are currently set up for Diana Allscripts, you're going to go to Current Patient Active. And this pulls up all the tasks that are assigned to this particular patient who's in the patient banner. And these may be assigned to a variety of different people, the nurses, the physicians, whatever. So that's your task list tab. Let's go back to the daily schedule. And actually, let's go to the provider's schedule real quick. I want to show you a way that you can pull in 4 physician schedules at one time. This is basically the same thing that you did on the daily schedule. You can click on the blue All button, type the name of the physician, click Go or hit Enter, and then just click OK. And this will pull in the physicians that you want. This will be useful for those of you who check in multiple physicians, if you have 3 or 4 physicians that you generally check in, or if you're working with a resident schedule. Just a little FYI, the drop-down arrows next to all of these fields will generally hold the last few things that you looked up. So if you click the drop-down arrow and you don't see the one you need, click the blue All button. Okay, let's go really quickly here to the clinical desktop, and we want to show you this is basically the patient's open chart, and you won't need to be in here a great deal, but you know, say the patient comes in and wants some information filled out on a form, you can access that information from here. Now, we already had a patient pulled into the patient banner, so when we click on clinical desktop, we're basically opening up her chart. We do want you to get in the habit of looking at the patient banner anytime you move around the screen, because it's pretty easy to accidentally pull somebody else in. If you're on one of the schedules, and if you click just once on one of these other names, look at the patient banner here. See, we just clicked once on Douglas, and all of a sudden his name populated in there. So it's pretty easy to accidentally pull the wrong person in, and whoever is in the patient banner is who you're working on, as far as the system's concerned. So, okay, back to the clinical desktop. As you can see here, we have 2 panes on the screen. We have allergies and encounter on the tabs on the first one. And on the other pane, we have meds, orders, and the problem list. And this basically gives you information that is in the patient's chart. If you go back to the allergies tab on the left-hand side, you can see here's the patient's allergies. Clicking on encounter again, and you can see all of their past appointments. You can look at them by date or by appointment. The medications and orders on the right-hand tab, you can look at current medications, past medications, or all medications and orders here. And if you click on the problem tab, here again you can view the patient's problems by active problems, their past medical history, past surgical history, family history, or everything. And this just kind of gives you a brief view of the patient's chart and what their problems are. Okay, now let's click real quickly on the Appointments tab. This is something else that we think you'll find really useful. As we know, a lot of times when patients come in, they'll ask the front desk when their appointment is in some other department, and generally you have no idea. Here on this Appointments tab, this shows all of the patient's appointments in the entire organization. So if you have Diana Allscripts pulled up in the banner and you click on that Appointments tab, you can look and see who she has an appointment with coming up. And this department field, by the way, it's currently blank. We do have that fixed, but it's not retroactive, so it's not pulling anything in here, but that will be working before we go live. And that's pretty much all we're going to cover today. We appreciate your taking the time to go over this and look at this video, and we do encourage you to get in here and play around, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us. Thanks a lot, guys.